Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 1 of season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars called Revival. And this definitely picks up right where we left off from the last season with the delightful adventures of Darth Maul and Savage Opress. And as the opening credits make clear to us, they are continuing their fun little tradition of murdering Jedi as we see them kill that rather unfortunate Twi'lek Jedi there in the opening. And let's dive right into it. That is not the only Jedi that they strike down this episode. They take out Adi Galadi or something like that. Forgive me. I'm just going to call her Adi for the sake of shortness. But yeah, forgive me if I don't exactly pronounce that right. But yeah, this is really a big deal, folks, because if it's not clear, she, like Obi-Wan, is a member of the Jedi Council, which means that she is the second member of the Jedi Council to die during the course of this show. We lost even Parval. I hate trying to pronounce some of these names sometimes. We lost him when they were breaking into the prison last season. Now, of course, if you're like me, a big fan of the expanded Star Wars universe, this does, of course, create yet more continuity problems, because it was established that in the comics, that she was actually killed by General Grievous on Boz Pity. Now, the rule for Star Wars is that the most recent thing is always the accepted canon. And again, part of the whole deal with Star Wars: The Clone Wars is it does significantly rewrite large portions of canon. So, as somebody who's a fan of the Clone Wars comics, I've just always sort of taken the attitude that until the show contradicts it, that it's canon. So while that does bother me to some degree, because the Clone Wars comics, written by a veteran Star Wars writer John Ostrander, really did introduce some really great stuff. They made for some very wonderful stories. The ultimate fate of Asajj Ventress in the comics. I don't think it's going to match up with what we get here in the TV show, but it was actually really well done, and I thought fit her character quite well. And of course, the big battle that Anakin has with her on Coruscant, where he really kicks Ventress's ass really good, and it apparently kills her. Of course, she survives. Was really just awesome as well. But anyway, at the end of the day, though, exactly how it is Adi dies is, to me, not hugely meaningful in the overall saga of Star Wars. I'm just rather disappointed that basically a member of the Jedi Council went down so easily. I mean, and this is exactly what happened last season. Last time we had a member of the Jedi Council mauled to death by an animal. I mean, wow, what a rotten way to go, huh? I mean, at least Mace Windu, fought Darth Sidious, defeated Darth Sidious, and would have killed him. And if Anakin hadn't betrayed the Jedi. I mean, seriously, he defeated the freaking Emperor. Here, Adi, gets headbutted by Savage Opress's horns, which, to be completely fair, has got to be a pretty nasty situation, and is then killed by him. Now, it's not as if we really needed, reminding that Savage is a very, very dangerous person. We've seen him kill Jedi on occasions before. We've seen him personally take on Count Dooku and Asajj Ventress and hold his own. So I don't really know exactly what purpose this really served. I mean, that he's an extremely dangerous person who can kill Jedi? Well, we already know that. And really, why throw away a member of the Jedi Council like this? It just doesn't seem like her death was treated in a terribly meaningful way, which, I won't lie, to me is a mark against this episode. But that said, if you also look at it as being reminded that Darth Maul and Savage Opress are not to be taken lightly, that if just these two of them can really give members of the Jedi Council a run for their money, then there is a lot of reason not to take these guys lightly. I mean, it has been an entire season, and I think if there's any reason why they chose to kill Adi, it was simply to remind us just how incredibly dangerous these two are. Darth Maul is a full-fledged Lord of the Sith. Now, granted, he was only an apprentice, but a Sith Lord is a Sith Lord. And as he does say in this episode, as far as he is concerned, Savage is his apprentice. He even says, there are always two, a master and an apprentice, invoking Darth Bane's rule of two, which at this point in the Star Wars universe has stood for 1,000 years. Now, I do love that. I mean, the Darth Bane stories are some really, really badass stuff. And certainly it does tie into the greater Star Wars canon. Now, granted, the rule of two is is much more fluid than its name implies, because technically there are now 4 Sith running around the galaxy: Darth Maul, Darth Sidious, Count Dooku, aka Darth Tyrannus, and now officially Savage Opress. He doesn't have a Darth name yet, but we'll see how long that lasts. I'm thinking that Darth Savage might possibly be in there for contention. But anyway, let me see here. Yes, one other thing that I have to say that I noticed about Darth Maul's character is that he really, really does not like people mistaking him for a Jedi. Now, there's this really fantastic comic book miniseries called Darth Maul, is it Shadowhunter? Something like that. But written by Ron Mars, a very experienced comic book writer, had some nice runs on stuff like Witchblade, really fantastic, almost legendary run on Green Lantern. And it's basically Darth Maul versus the Black Sun Crime Syndicate. And it is probably my favorite Darth Maul story of all time. It just really goes out there and really shows you just how scary and badass Darth Maul is. And part of it is the story is Darth Maul infiltrating this crime syndicate. And after seeing his lightsaber, one of the guys asks him, like, what are you, some kind of a Jedi or something? And Maul just snarls at him, no. So I kind of think that what we're seeing here was a little bit of a nod to that Darth Maul does not like being mistaken for a Jedi. And this does very much in keeping with his character, because one of the few lines that he actually got in The Phantom Menace was something along the lines of, "At last we will have our revenge on the Jedi." One thing you have to keep in mind about Darth Maul is he absolutely hates Jedi. He, Palpatine after Order 66 basically said the Jedi are finished. I don't care really about the handful of survivors all that much. Darth Maul was the guy who would have gone out there and personally hunted down every last Jedi in the galaxy just because they existed. And I gotta say, folks, I definitely like that aspect of his character. Excuse me. I think it's really interesting, and it most certainly does not bode well for the Jedi who are now alive during the Clone Wars. I have a feeling that poor Adi is not going to be the last Jedi who fall to these guys. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And speaking of those two, I kind of felt a little sorry for Savage. He's not too keen on the idea of being forced into the role of an apprentice again. And honestly, given what happened with him and Dooku and Ventress, with him and Dooku, I guess I should say, it's not terribly surprising that he doesn't want to be put in the subservient position again. I mean, look what happens to him every time he's put in the subservient position. He's horribly transformed into sort of a living monster and kills his own brother. He's treated horribly by Count Dooku, and he's constantly trying to reach out to Maul, reminding him that they're brothers, that they should be really brothers and partners in all this. And Maul is very insistent on treating him as his apprentice. I mean, this even breaks out into a fight. Now, Savage essentially sort of eventually caves to this, but it does serve to remind us that there is there's a limit to just how far brotherhood will go between these two. I mean, as I've said, Savage killed his own brother once. That Maul does see Savage as his brother, but he sees himself as a Sith Lord first and foremost, and embraces all that comes with that. And I do like that Savage was basically kind of saying to Maul, like, brother, here's all this money. If we're gonna, get ourselves an army and all this, we're gonna need this. And Maul just sort of blows him off, which is a very telling sign of just what's going on with the relationship, and a reminder that as smart as he is, Maul is really driven at the end of the day by his desire for revenge more than he is by logic. And this is something that ultimately does end up working against these two. Because at the end of the day, two Sith Lords, I granted them one of them only a Sith Lord in title only, are defeated by a motley band of pirates. Now, granted, this motley band of pirates is led by the always entertaining and surprisingly competent Hondo Kar. He reminds me an awful lot of the character of Talon Karrde from the Star Wars Expanded Universe at times, in that he is this sort of rather morally dubious guy who, at the end of the day, is still extraordinarily good at what he does. Talon Karrde is a very talented guy with that whole underworld stuff, and pirate or not, Hondo Kar is not someone to be taken lightly. I mean, these guys do drive off two Sith. And as I said, Hondo is, of course, massively entertaining as always. So I do like that they brought him back, and he really was the source of the majority of humor in this episode, which, honestly, this episode did need to sort of get away from the major grimness that's going on. And not just grimness, but brutality. I mean, Obi-Wan cuts off Savage's arm and breaks his leg. Even Darth Maul almost loses one of his mechanical legs. And again, this is all to one Jedi and a bunch of pirates. So really, this is a reminder that while Savage and Maul are extraordinarily dangerous, in a way, they really are just sort of wild animals. They do have these flashes of insight, of tactics, of thinking, but at the end of the day, really, they're just some loose cannons, some extraordinarily dangerous loose cannons. But at the moment, they're not those planners, they're not those leaders, they're not those commanders of armies like Dooku and Sidious are. Let me see here. Moving away from those guys. Oh yeah, no. Actually, there was one more thing that I wanted to say before we move away from talking about Darth Maul and Savage Opress. Am I the only one that when Darth Maul uses the Force to move a spaceship was seriously reminded of Starkiller using the Force to crash a Star Destroyer in the first The Force Unleashed game? I mean, wow. Talk about size matters not. But I think in addition to sort of giving us a little bit of a nod to The Force Unleashed, and again reminding us just how powerful Darth Maul is, that was just a really cool moment. But anyway, one thing. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm trying to remember what one of the little things I scratched out on there means, and I'm drawing a complete blank. So I guess we will just have to leave that be for the moment. But let's move on and talk about a tiny little thing that I noticed in this episode. It's that the guy that shows Adi and Obi-Wan around the spaceship, the alien fellow, that fellow happened to be a Snivian. Now, Snivians in my book are actually pretty cool. They're one of the aliens that you see briefly in the cantina scene in the original Star Wars movie. And one of my favorite Star Wars Expanded Universe characters, Marn Hieroglyph, aka Griff, from the Knights of the Old Republic comic books, happens to be a Snivian. He's a Snivian con man, and the unofficial mentor to wash out Jedi Zane Carrick, and just the story of Zane and Griff that they go on in the Knights of the Old Republic comics is quite literally my absolute favorite Star Wars story of all time. Those 50 issues of the Knights of the Old Republic are to me just gold. I absolutely love them with all my heart. And the fact that they printed like 3 letters from me during the run of that series, that doesn't really hurt either. But moving on, let's talk about Obi-Wan. Well, first of all, Obi-Wan sees his friend and fellow member of the Jedi Council, Adi, die, and that obviously has a pretty big impact on him. But here it is. He's dealing with Darth Maul once again, and of course Savage Opress, who has murdered many Jedi, many civilians, and as we saw last season, was heavily implied to have murdered children. So we really do see here Obi-Wan dealing with some really serious rage. I mean, it's never explicitly mentioned, but you can see that his issues with Darth Maul are, if anything, the one thing in the galaxy that could really push good old Obi-Wan to the dark side. And when he gets his hands on that second lightsaber and just really starts going to town on those two, it's really not that hard to see that Obi-Wan is forgetting that Jedi training. He is just going on pure good old-fashioned rage. And for a Jedi as powerful as Obi-Wan, that's some extraordinarily scary territory to go to. He does not pull any punches. Now, granted, Obi-Wan can't really afford to pull punches in a fight, a simultaneous fight with Darth Maul and Savage. Unless he gives it all, he's going to die. But you can tell that Obi-Wan is, I don't know if enjoying it is exactly the word I'm looking for, but he's certainly not going to be losing any sleep over having cut off Savage's arm or broken his leg. And the Jedi Council are honestly not wrong for saying he needs to step away from this. He needs to stay away from these guys because his judgment is clouded. But, I mean, we have seen that the death of Qui-Gon Jinn also, like it does Anakin, really haunts Obi-Wan, and that he is not above being somewhat irrational if the chance to avenge Qui-Gon is presented to him. Now, granted, the Jedi Council doesn't really seem to have much of a problem with Anakin dealing with Asajj Ventress, who gave him that really nasty scar on his face, or Count Dooku, who freaking cut off his arm. Nobody ever says to Anakin, Anakin, Ventress, and Dooku, it's probably better if you stay away from those two if you can possibly help it. And, never mind that Ventress seems to have developed a personal interest in killing Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or at the very least she did before she went off to kind of do her bounty hunter thing. But again, the Jedi Council is apparently extraordinarily selective about when they employ their rules. Like my favorite example is that Cam Solador's father was censured by the Jedi Council for fathering a child. Cam, of course, ended up serving in the New Jedi Order in the later Star Wars expanded universe. But if you think about that, and this is something that would, if you look at the Star Wars timeline, almost certainly have happened around the time of the Clone Wars, then if that's what happened, then the idea that the Jedi would boot Anakin out of the Order for simply getting married seems much more questionable. I mean, it's even explicitly stated that Jedi Knight and Jedi Council member Ki-Adi-Mundi is indeed married. Now, granted, that's due to the fact that males of his species are much, 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 much rarer than females of his species. But still, I look at that sort of thing and think, you know what? I think Anakin could have survived as a Jedi Knight if he'd been discovered to have married Padme. But you know what? That's just speculation on my part and me sort of just grumbling at Star Wars canon in general. Well, it would seem that I still do not remember what one of the notes that I have taken means. Doubtlessly, I will start kicking myself later on today when I finally do remember what I wanted to talk about when I scribbled that down. But that's something for me to look forward to later. With that, though, I'm going to wrap this up. I definitely think that this season is off to a really good start. We got some very intense action, some really nice character stuff, and this series is definitely not pulling any punches. So I think we're looking forward to an absolutely fantastic season. So with that said, folks, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. I do, as soon as, and I mean immediately, as soon as these videos are finished uploading to YouTube, immediately tweet about them. So if you want to be able to see these reviews as soon as humanly possible, then please do join me on Twitter. I'd love to have you as a follower. And with that said, folks, I'm going to end it here. As always, please take care and have a good one.